All set.
I hereby call this meeting to order. Good evening. This is a meeting of the City Council sitting as the Finance Committee. And there is a quorum present, finally. And would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Councilors, this evening, before we begin, Councilors Rodriguez and Texera are not able to be with us, and Councilor Azak is also not able to be with us. I think Councilor D'Agostino is on the way, and Clerk Cruz is unfortunately not able to be with us, and we send him our best wishes for a speedy recovery. Madam Clerk.
Item number 1, acceptance of the minutes of the November 20th, 2023 Finance Committee meeting.
Accepted and placed on file.
Item number 2, we have the reappointment of Mr. Robert Graham of Brockton, Massachusetts to the Board of Directors of the Brockton Council on Aging pursuant to the City of Brockton Ordinances, Section 2-414, for a term of 3 years. Invited, Robert Graham.
Is Mr. Graham here? Would you join us at the podium? Just state your name and address for the clerk's records.
My name is Robert Graham. My address is number 6 Alphonse Road in Brockton, Massachusetts, 02302.
And this is a hearing of your reappointment as a member of the Board of the Council on Aging. Is there anything you'd like to say to us this evening?
The only thing I'd like to say is that since retirement, my main purpose in life is supporting the senior citizens of Brockton and the veterans of Brockton. I'm involved with the VFW Post 1046, which I'm there just about every day, and I help promote the city of Brockton to those people and the Council on Aging to the people. I deliver newsletters there every month, so they have access to know what's going on, and I just enjoy doing it because I can't sit around doing nothing. Just can't do it.
That's wonderful. And this is, you're just finishing your second appointment?
Yes.
Right, so
Yes.
you're looking for a third.
Right.
That's great. Councilors?
Motion to recommend favorably.
Okay, motions are made and properly seconded to recommend favorably. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you, it carries. Thank you, Mr. Graham, and thank you for your service to
You're
our
welcome.
country.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Item number 3, reappointment of Stephen Hook of Brockton, Massachusetts to the Traffic Commission pursuant to the City of Brockton Ordinances, Section 466, for a term of 3 years. Invited, Stephen Hook.
Good evening.
Madam Chair, City Councilors, good evening. Stephen Hook, 31 Hammond Street. As you know, I've served on the Traffic Commission for the past 6 years, and I'd like to continue. And I just want to thank Mayor Sullivan for pushing my reappointment forward.
Motion to recommend favorably.
Second.
Motions are made and properly seconded to recommend favorably. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you for your willingness to serve.
Thank you, Mr. Hook.
Item number 4, ordered, in accordance with the general laws of Massachusetts, Chapter 44, recommending that the City Council approve the expenditure of $935,657.31 from DPW Sewer Division. Other contracted services FY24 to Viola, $213,560.97, $238,820.35, $483,275.99 in order to cover unanticipated expenses for the remainder of the fiscal year. Invited, Patrick Hill, DPW Commissioner, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Councilor.
Good evening, Madam Chairman. I'll give a brief introduction, and then Pat will follow that up and be happy to answer any questions you have. I did send you 2 pieces of information on this item and the one that follows, and I'm just going to read a portion of the email that I sent you on Thursday. I said, we realize that this amount of unpaid bills is extraordinary. However, the escalating costs of everything from chemicals to capital improvements to the Veolia contract itself has placed significant pressure on the cost of operation. So this request and the one that follows are a combination of high-cost items that are facing the water and the sewer enterprises. And also, some of them are bills that were received after the deadline, as we've been dealing with on a regular basis. That is a deliberate attempt to sharpen and clean up our accounting practices, and so that part is intentional. In terms of the actual increased cost, and this particular one, this is for the sewer, we recently renewed the contract with Veolia, and the special act that exists only for Brockton allows some flexibility in the way repairs are made and capital items are paid for at the sewer plant. And so just in the last year, I'll give you an example, and again, Pat can give you more details on this, but we have had to replace the centrifuge, the generator at the sewer plant, and some valve replacements. When we get to the water, I can share some projects that have been necessary there. So I understand that by paying these expenses this year, we passed this year's budget, trying to understand and estimate what those costs would be, and this expenditure most certainly will impact this year's budget. Our plan and our submission for the retained earnings for all of the enterprise, we anticipate will be filed actually within the next few days. And we, as you know, we monitor the budget closely. Should we need it, we can transfer retained earnings once they're certified to meet the needs of the budget this year. So I'll repeat, we understand this is an extraordinary practice, one that we do not plan on being repeated. However, there were just these cost pressures, and the proper way to address them is the way that we are proceeding tonight. I think that's enough of an introduction based on the information that I provided you both Thursday and then again yesterday, and Pat can answer any particular questions you have on the bills.
Motion to recommend favorably?
On the motion?
It's not seconded
Oh, sorry.
yet.
Second.
All right, a motion's been made and properly seconded. On the motion, Counselor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you stated that the reason for this is because of additional expenses, capital projects, stuff to that effect that you just mentioned. But this is going, it says to Veolia. So say you mentioned a generator. So Veolia pays for that generator?
The way the contract, the new contract was negotiated, and part of it is because of the special act that exists. There's a home rule petition from decades ago, quite some time ago, that we are able to have Veolia within this contract pay for and install any repairs that need to be made, and then we pay them.
Okay. Yes. And were these services, were they contemplated at the time of the budget when we were putting the budget together, or these repairs came later?
That's a good point, Counselor. And no, and that's what I was trying to express in my opening remarks, that they're somewhat extraordinary. And I'm not a sewer plant operator, but when we stood before you in June, we didn't anticipate needing that kind of capital improvements in a single year. And so it's just beyond, we carry, I think it's $300,000?
$300,000 a year for plant capitals.
And so this is above and beyond the $300,000?
Correct.
Okay. And you're confident that our retained earnings would be able to backfill this expenditure so that we're not running behind come the rest of the fiscal year, or any other additional emergency repairs that are needed?
I certainly hope so. I should tell you that, because I didn't mention it, that I believe some of these costs also were for a sludge.
Yes.
And we've been before you a couple of different times talking about the increased cost of sludge removal. We're working on a plan to deal with that long term with both the earmark, the federal earmark that we got from Congress, and some hope that the state revolving fund will support some sort of environmentally friendly solution. But the sludge removal continues to be a significant cost pressure as well. So I hope, but can never predict what those, we have so many cost escalators, And as I mentioned in the email to you on Thursday, the inflation pressures that have affected all of our lives affect the operations at the sewer plant as well.
I mean, you mentioned sludge, and then just quickly, I know that contract's coming up shortly. That'll be before us at the turn of the year, I would assume?
Yes. Once it's finalized, we did award a contract, or we're finalizing the award of a contract right now. But, you know, we're going from $146.50 per ton to $204 per ton, which is an annual increase of $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, that's outrageous. Unfortunately, I believe we only have, one service provider for that?
2 people bid on the project, which we were surprised. Veolia and Denali Water. Denali Water ended up winning the bid, so, I mean, it is what it is. It's a very short market, so.
Right. Well, we'll deal with that one come next year, but I appreciate that. No further questions.
Thank you. Councillor Farwell.
Just a few questions for the record, and I did have a chance to talk to Mr. Claxon by phone. For the sewer, it looks like this is predominantly for sludge transfer, all of the attachments. It says JM transfer and then different various amounts, and it looks like it's for May and June of 2023?
Correct.
All right, so if in May and June of 2023, we knew that these amounts were owed, I'm just a little concerned that we weren't told about it or why we didn't plan. On the other hand, if Veolia was late in billing us for these, you know, shame on them. I mean, they must know how a municipality functions. And what this did was it artificially made us think that perhaps we had a higher retained earnings in our account than we did, because we now got hit with all of this, with all of the extra funding. So, I'm not quite sure. In past usage, I'm rambling a little bit, but past usage, we would have known in May and June of 2022 probably what we were paying and what we were using for consumption and sludge hauling. So it just is a bit mysterious to me that this suddenly pops up.
So I will tell you, Council, that we did a deep dive into encumbrances that were within the sewer department. And there was a practice years ago of encumbering money and carrying it from year to year. We did discover a pretty substantial amount of money in encumbrances that we have since rectified. We used some of that money to offset some of these costs. That's not going to happen anymore. Oftentimes what would happen towards the end of a fiscal year is, you know, somebody would come out of, you know, and I wasn't involved in that process, but there were encumbrances made to kind of offset some of these costs in the past. I wasn't familiar with that process. We weren't familiar with the amount of encumbrances that were existing, some of them dating back to 2010. We've since rectified that. But it's something that I'm really trying to get a handle on. It's generally, you're right, the invoices for sludge are pretty steady. Certainly the Veolia costs are steady on a monthly basis. They kind of are what they are. They increase yearly based on the PPI, but that doesn't happen until July. But we're taking a long look at the budget, and we're taking a long look at fees, just to make sure that the fees are going to support the budget for years to come. So we're having that done right now.
Well, what's wrong with an encumbrance if it's for a known vendor and it's for a known amount that's owed? I mean, I would, if we had an encumbrance for vendor to be determined for a couple of $100,000, I would object to that. But it's just interesting that, and I realize things have changed since I was in the mayor's office 30 years ago, but we're starting to have these issues come up that we never had a problem with before. And I don't understand why we wouldn't want to encumber money and carry it over. For example, let's say you ordered a truck for $100,000. it may not be delivered until September 1st, but you'd want to encumber that $100,000 because you can't pay it until obviously we take delivery of the truck. But on the other hand, you wouldn't want to negate the encumbrance because then when the bill did come in, you'd have to take it out of the succeeding fiscal year. And that would seem to me to work at cross purposes. You want to identify what you're spending in a given fiscal year and not have this carryover.
Let me try to answer that, Pat, and then you can follow up, because I'll speak broadly about the process of encumbrances. Because, Counselor, you absolutely hit the nail on the head with what you just described. And you're absolutely correct. You did not see these sorts of unpaid bills in previous years. But that's precisely because there was a long-standing practice of just encumbering money for general purposes, and then as bills came in, paying out of those encumbrances. You're absolutely correct, Counselor, that an encumbrance has to be for a specific purpose, in fact, for a specific invoice and a specific vendor. You cannot just encumber funds because you know bills are going to come in, and that was a long-standing practice here. So we are working to try to clean up that practice, and as you might imagine, with all of the departments we have and the hundreds, if not thousands of bills, weaning our departments off of that practice has been difficult. And that has resulted in those unpaid bills that you see coming before you, because we're no longer allowing departments to simply encumber funds for general purposes and then pay prior year bills. The proper way to do it is for the City Council to be able to weigh in on that. And you'll see we are also, tomorrow night, I'll be before the school committee for the same purpose, because we're trying to bring those best practices to the school department as well.
Well, I think too, Counselor, it gives you a false sense of retained earnings, which makes it very hard to balance the budget. So
I guess what I'm trying to say is we have had Veolia for a long period of time. We certainly should know approximately what we're going to owe them for the month of May and June, because we would have prior history of paying invoices. What we've now done is we're going to short the FY24 budget because we have to pay this. But then, yes, we can go back and transfer money into it. And I just think that we need to give the departments a little leeway on these encumbrances. I understand more bills are going to come in, and we're going to have to go through the same process for other departments. Because, for example, IT may have ordered some equipment, it didn't get delivered, you closed out the FY23 budget, they weren't allowed to carry over an encumbrance to that particular vendor supplying whatever it is. And so we've made more work for ourselves than I think is necessary. A general encumbrance, I completely agree, is not proper. But if we have departments who have identified a good or service that they need from a particular fiscal year budget, and they have the invoice, but they haven't received delivery of whatever the good or the service is, just respectfully, I think they ought to be left alone, because...
And I don't think that's what I was trying to reference when I was talking about encumbrances. My point was that there were encumbrances to multiple vendors for money that we were not aware was within, the scope of the budget. So had that money been in the budget, I probably could have used it as with retained earnings. I could not. It had been sitting in an encumbrance since 2010, some of them 2012, some of them 2016. So we've since rectified that issue. That money will now go into the retained earnings that'll be before you guys in a couple of weeks, which will help offset some of these costs. But a lot of the costs that come from the sewer plant come from specifically Veolia. So I agree. I would love to encumber money and just pay Veolia. It just, it's a year-by-year thing. So.
And I think I mentioned my last comment. I think I mentioned to Mr. Clarkson, the vendors with whom we do business, they've got to understand they need to get their invoices in.
Absolutely.
I mean, when I see us owing Abington Police Department, Plymouth County Sheriff, Brockton PD, Town of Holbrook, East Bridgewater, they operate under the same municipal finance laws we do.
Agreed.
Get your invoices in so they can be processed and we can pay them, and not have this occur in the future. And maybe I'm overly sensitive because of what happened in the schools. I want people to know on this side of the city, and in the city council, we watch these things very, very carefully. And we're going to make sure that everything is just as it should be.
Indeed, and that's exactly, another good point, and that's exactly why these items are before you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
President.
I do have two questions. What is the balance of the sewer enterprise account?
So I'm going to answer that question in a couple of different ways, because as you know, the actual balance runs on a June 30 balance. Our retained earnings are not certified yet. We do anticipate them being certified, but I asked, and I know you've met him before, but I do want to reintroduce Evan Lacasse, who is our acting budget director. We are in day one of the post-Tiff Casulo era. I will tell you, we heard from her today, and she's enjoying her new post with the probation board, and sends her best wishes to all of you. So I'll answer that in two ways. Looking back to FY23, when we look at revenues, total expenses, and we did in both enterprises use prior year retained earnings to balance the budget. So this is rough estimates before the numbers are filed with the Department of Revenue. But for water, we're looking at, this is FY23, retained earnings in excess of $3 million, and sewer in excess of $1.5 million. Thus far this year, so this is as of today, water revenues are at $6.8 million, or about 37% of projected. Sewer revenues are at $5.3 million, or about 27% of projected. That's as of today. And expenses should be at 42% as of today. And water, they're total about $12.5 million at 35%. And sewer as of today, again, should be 42.9%. And because of the payment of debt service, we're running a little over that at 53%. I should note, though, that don't let the revenue numbers alarm you, because we do have, as you probably all know, water and sewer bills that just went out. So we have a significant amount. We've done a good job in the last few years of collecting very close to our projected amount. So both enterprise funds appear to be healthy, both for last year and thus far this year.
Thank you. And I heard you mention the federal earmark for the sludge research, $2 million. Do I understand correctly, we have not received those funds yet?
We've not. Paul Umano in my office has been working diligently with Senator Markey's office. So both the earmark for the sludge and the pool are in process. They're approved. They're not. The funding's not in danger. It's just the federal agencies that deal with those earmarks have been sluggish in producing those funds. But because they were provided, we're able to proceed with the projects. So I mean, the pool is under construction because we have ARPA funds that we're using now until the earmark comes in.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? We have a motion on the floor, and it's been recommended favorably, councilors. All in favor? All opposed? Thank you. It carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Item number 5, ordered in accordance with the general laws of Massachusetts, Chapter 44, recommending that the City Council approve the expenditure of $530,872.99 from DPW Water Division Purchase of Services FY24 of $530,152.78, DPW Water Division Goods and Supplies FY24 $720.21, to Brockton Police Department $5,713.38, Abington Police Department $825, Plymouth County Sheriff $440, each Bridgewater Police Department $440, Town of Holbrook Police Department $1,276, Plimpton Police Department, $2,186. Advantage Truck Rainham LLC, $1,540.15. Burke Dennis K. Inc., $667.86. United Construction and Forestry LLC, $920.74. Woodward's Auto Spring Shop, $22.39. Zeb, $720.21. Constellation, $248,817.85. Bartarelli Brothers, $2,520. Veolia, $251,153.54. Modern Auto Body, $7,142.88. TL Edwards, Inc., $6,486.39. Invited Patrick Hill, DPW Commissioner, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Councilors?
So, very brief this time, as I mentioned in my introduction for item number 4, more of these are bills that were received after the filing deadline, but they do represent ongoing costs of the water department.
Councilor
Motion to
Farwell.
Actually, I'll make a motion to recommend favorably, and then
Second.
we'll speak on it.
On the motion.
On the motion, what would be the harm, well, let me back up a minute. When we renegotiated with Veolia, what is the new expiration date of the?
I believe it's a total of 20 years, the contract with, they come in 5-year spurts, so.
Okay, at the end of the 5 years, do we have to renew?
I don't think we're obligated to renew, no.
So I guess my question would be, for the benefit of the residents and taxpayers, what would be the harm going out to bid? There's nothing that says you have to get rid of Veolia, and clearly you have authorization to keep them, but sometimes when vendors find a home, they get a little bit comfortable. And what would be the harm in taking a look at what bids might be received and where they stood?
I don't disagree with you, Counselor. Typically, there were 4 big vendors in the business, right? There was Veolia, there was Suez, there was Jacobs, and I'm not, off the top of my head, I can't think of the other company, but we received 4 bids on both the water and wastewater projects. I will say since then, Veolia is the largest. Suez was the second largest. Veolia has since taken Suez over. So now Veolia is by far the world's largest operation vendor. Price point, it was uncomparable when the bids went out, and we did all the reviews. They bring a lot to the table. I'm not saying that we shouldn't look at it, but it is a very long process. That RFP process, I believe, took us 3 or 4 months to review. So,
Kind of worries me now that they've taken over the other company, because competition can sometimes make for a better price.
it worried the French government too, because they held up the acquisition for about 1.5 years. So,
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam.
Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly going through the listed amounts, see that Constellation is roughly half of the transfer. Could you tell us who Constellation is and what services they provide?
So Constellation is an energy provider. The rates increased significantly last year. We calculated our Constellation bills based on the year before. Energy is a big component of water and wastewater treatment. So I believe we are the highest user in the city, so the wastewater plant.
Constellation's our energy provider. Are we in a service contract with them, or?
Yes.
Okay, and then, so their rates increased, and that's why this amount's due?
Yes. We're contractually obligated with Constellation. I believe that they go to market every year, and that rate is determined at some portion of prior to the fiscal year. Yeah.
We did have a company that was consulting for the city that on a regular basis put the commodities out to bid. We've actually changed that, and recently, under the leadership of the mayor, And we've switched consultants, and we now use Amoresco, who we use for lots of our energy services under a long-term contract that was executed many years ago under, I believe, Mayor Carpenter. And we just secured very competitive electric rates, and I'm happy to share with all of you, in a contract that begins next year. So this is the tail end of the existing contract where the commodities were purchased, I think, on a more frequent basis. We just locked them in for long term, and I believe that's why the rates were fluctuating and were higher than we anticipated.
So are we now, for the services that Constellation are provided, Aresco now provides those services? Or that's next year?
Amoresco provides the consulting services, and we put the electricity out to bid, and we might have re-upped with Constellation. I honestly don't remember, Council, but I'll get that information for you. But because we were purchasing the commodity for a longer term, we got a more competitive price per kilowatt hour.
Understood. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Well, gentlemen, as you know, we spoke today, and I emailed you, because I reviewed all of these invoices, and the numbers for the police details don't add up. Can you give me some explanation?
So the way that the police details come over, they're generated, the invoice comes over to the specific department. In this case, it's the water department. Certain projects from within the water department get paid through separate funds. So I know there's some slips in here, they reference dig it construction, please pull these aside. So from the top of the invoice down to the bottom, if you add them up, it's certainly not what we're asking for.
Right.
Those dig it construction, and I use dig it as an example, but anything that's paid out of SRF funding gets paid separately through a reimbursement process. So we weren't trying to recover that money.
Okay, not that I ever want this to happen again, what we're doing right now, but in the future, it would be great if you gave us a little chart and told us what portion of the invoices you were looking for, just so
Understood.
that, there's a map.
I do have a business manager that I will be interviewing for that position next week. This will be one of the roles of the business manager, to kind of reel in this whole invoicing process, looking over the budgets, trying to calculate where we stand before the end of the year, so we can be up in front of you, hopefully before the end of the year, instead of coming 3 or 4 months after the fiscal budget started. So,
Right, thank you.
thank you, Council.
Anyone else? All right, a motion's been made and properly seconded to recommend this favorably back to the council. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you, it carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Item number 6, ordered that the City Council authorizes the acceptance and expenditure of the total grant funds in the amount of $60,000 from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety and Security to the Police Department FY24 Municipal Road Safety Program, $60,000. Invited, Lugina Lopes, Grant Coordinator, Brockton Police Department, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer.
Good evening, Ms. Lopes.
Good evening, Madam. Good evening, members of the council. So the Municipal Road Safety Grant is used towards addressing traffic safety issues. The award amount is set forth by the state based off the population. So $60,000 was the max award that was allowed for FY24, which is what the department was awarded. These funds are used for overtime shifts. These will be used towards 6 pedestrian and bicycle campaigns, which monitor crosswalk safety, as well as 5 traffic campaigns. The 5 traffic campaigns that will be covered under this grant, the first one is actually beginning this month of December, which is the winter impaired driving. We also have distracted driving, which happens in April, click it or ticket, which happens in May, summer speed campaign, which happens between June and July, and lastly, the summer impaired campaign, which runs from August through September. This grant aims to provide education and enforcement, so officers aren't really going out and giving people citations. It's really used to kind of educate the public on traffic safety. There is no match for this grant, and from the feedback that we have received, it's been a positive interaction for officers as well as members of the community. Take any
Motion to
questions
recommend
if you have
favorably.
any.
Second.
On the motion?
On the motion, we could use 4 times this amount.
I'm sure.
And I know the chief isn't here, but education is important. We've reached a point in this city where we need enforcement, and I hope you'll carry that message back. I'm driving easterly on Belmont Street, coming down to this meeting in absolute darkness, and I have a car going in the opposite direction with no headlights on. Flash the lights, absolutely nothing, oblivious. Just driving down Belmont Street, 30 miles an hour, no headlights. But we absolutely need to start using more of these grants for enforcement. Education, yes, but enforcement. It's the only way we're going to knock down the accident rate. So I really appreciate your work on this. I just wish it were for 240,000 instead of 60,000, because this will get eaten up fast.
Absolutely.
It does. It goes very quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilors?
I said thank you. I'm all
Okay.
done.
Motion's been made and properly seconded to recommend favorably. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Good night.
Number 7, ordered that the City Council hereby rescinds the tax increment financing agreement, TIF, between the city and Air Energy Group, LLC, approved October 24th, 2023. Invited John O'Donnell, Chairman, Board of Assessor, Mayor Robert Sullivan, Rob May, Director of Planning and Economic Development, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer.
Good evening, Mr. Clarkson.
Good evening, Madam Chairman. The mayor's unable to be here tonight, but I'm happy to introduce this and the next item to you. With your permission, I'll speak broadly on both of them. Back in October, you approved what we recommended to you was an important step forward in attracting a new business to Brockton, and the tax increment financing agreement with Air Energy Group was something that the mayor and I and Chairman of the Board of Assessors, John O'Donnell, enthusiastically supported. When this TIF agreement went to the Commonwealth to be approved, they asked us to make some changes. If you remember during the presentation, at this point, Air Energy Group intends to occupy half of, a portion of, the building that exists. In trying to be creative, we suggested offering the TIF for half the building. The Commonwealth, through the Mass Office of Business Development, is suggesting that their interpretation of the guidelines require that the TIF be offered for the entirety of the property. So we're asking you to rescind the previous TIF that you approved, and then in an article following, approve a new one. The TIF itself, the number of years, the 7 years, and the percentage of the tax incentives remains the same. The numbers do change a little bit because it's now for the entirety of the property, but we've provided both the updated numbers and the updated TIF agreement to you via email, but this, in my opinion, still is a very effective tool to bring a wonderful company to the city of Brockton, many jobs along with it, and investment in our city.
Motion to recommend favorably.
Second?
Okay, motion's been made and properly seconded to recommend favorably. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you, it carries.
Number 8, order that the City Council authorizes and approves the tax increment financing agreement between the city and Air Energy Group, LLC. This agreement will contribute to the ongoing economic vitality of the city and will commit to job creation and increased revenue. Invited, John O'Donnell, Chairman, Board of Assessors, Mayor Robert Sullivan, Rob May, Director of Planning and Economic Development, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer, Scott Petrozone, Vice President of Air Energy Group, Cliff Lamont, Director of Facilities Flow Control Group, Lynn Tezorek, Government Tax and Sensitive Consultants.
Councilor Lally.
Madam Chair, thank you. I believe that the assessor might be able to add some detail to it if needed, but there was something that was required on this order that was left off of it, so I'd like to offer that as an amendment now. I can read it. So I'd motion to add an amendment that the City Council authorizes and approves the tax increment financing agreement between the city, Brockton Industrial Property Owner LLC, and Air Energy Group LLC regarding 105 Industrial Boulevard, Brockton, Massachusetts. This agreement will contribute to the ongoing economic vitality of the city and will commit to job creation and increased revenue.
That's right. We wanted to add in the landlord, the owner of the
Yes.
property as part of it. Okay.
Second.
All right, a motion's been made and properly seconded to amend the order. All in favor? Thank you, it carries.
Motion to recommend the order favorably,
Second.
as amended.
Okay. Anyone have any questions or concerns? How about that? You sat here and watched, and away we go. All right, motion's been made and properly seconded to recommend this new TIF agreement favorably. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you, it carries. Thank you for being here. Thank you. All of you.
Thanks, Bud. Item number 9, be it resolved to invite interim superintendent James Cobbs, school committee vice chair Kathleen Ellers, and Mayor Robert Sullivan to appear before the city council sitting as the finance committee to discuss the Brockton Public Schools, Brockton High School, and recent issues regarding budget and financial governance, audit, staffing, and matters related thereto. Invited James Cobbs, interim superintendent, Kathleen Ellers, school committee vice chair, Mayor Robert Sullivan.
Counselors, our invited guests are unable to be here this evening. I will entertain a motion to postpone this to the next Finance Committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. The motion's been made and properly seconded to postpone to the next Finance Committee meeting. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. It carries. All right. That's it for our program. At this time, I'd like to thank our Legislative Counsel, Attorney Shannon Resnick, for smoothly stepping in Clerk Cruz's shoes. Does anyone have any announcements or anything they'd like to say? All right, then, this meeting is adjourned.
Right.
Wow.
All right.
We all